When I found out my daughter got married, it wasn't through a phone call or a letter or even a message. It was through pictures. Beautiful, smiling pictures that flooded my phone one morning. Her in a white dress, standing under fairy lights, holding the hand of a man I had never met. At first, I thought it was a photo shoot. She always loved pictures. As a little girl, she would stand in front of the mirror, posing with her plastic tiara, asking, "Mama, do I look like a princess?" And I would always say, "You already are, my love." But that morning, as I scrolled, my heart sank. The captions were filled with words like wedding, bride, congratulations. And suddenly, the world around me went silent. I stared at those pictures for what felt like hours. She looked radiant, happier than I had seen her in years. But I wasn't there. Her mother, the one who raised her, fed her, held her when she cried, wasn't invited. I remember whispering to myself, why didn't she tell me? I tried calling her again and again. No answer. Each ring felt like a door closing, one after another. I sat down on the couch, holding my phone, feeling my heart break quietly, not in anger, but in confusion. Did I do something wrong? Was I too strict, too protective? Or maybe she simply didn't need me anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. The rain kept tapping on the window, and every drop sounded like a memory. Her first steps, her laughter, her little hands reaching for mine. And now, those hands were holding someone else's, promising forever. I wasn't angry at her, just invisible, forgotten in the happiest day of her life. And that's when something inside me shifted, a quiet ache that turned into resolve. If she could let go so easily, maybe I needed to let go too. I didn't know then that my decision, what I did next, would change everything. My daughter's name is Emily. She was my only child. After her father passed away when she was 8, she became my whole world. I still remember the way she used to cling to my arm at night, afraid of thunder. She'd whisper, "Mama, the sky is angry." And I'd pull her close and say, "No, sweetheart, it's just the clouds talking to each other." She would giggle softly, and soon she'd be asleep, her tiny hand wrapped around mine. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at the bakery, evenings cleaning offices. Everything I did was for her school books, her clothes, her future. And every time I felt tired, I'd look at her sleeping and think, it's worth it. When Emily grew older, things began to change. She became quiet, distant sometimes. Teenage years, they say. But even then, she was kind. She'd help me cook, laugh with me while folding laundry, and talk about her dreams, how she wanted to be a teacher, travel, see the world. We shared secrets, tea, and laughter in that little house. That house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was our story. I bought it after her father's death, working hard to give her stability. I used to tell her, "This is your home, Emily. No matter where you go, you'll always have a place here." And she'd smile and say, "I know, Mama." When she went off to college, I cried for a week straight. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd walk into her room and find her old teddy bear sitting on the bed, the one her father gave her before he died. Sometimes I'd sit there, holding that bear and talk to it, as if talking to both of them. Emily would call often, at least at first. She'd tell me about her classes, her new friends, her favorite coffee shop near campus. I'd listen for hours, smiling like a fool because her happiness was my reward. But slowly, the calls became fewer, the messages shorter. She started saying, "I'm busy, Mama, I'll call you soon," and soon never really came. I thought it was normal. She was building her life. Every parent goes through that phase of quiet distance, don't they? But I still sent her gifts, birthday cards, little care packages filled with homemade cookies. One day she brought a young man home. His name was Daniel. He was polite, well-dressed, spoke with confidence. I could see the admiration in her eyes when she looked at him. He shook my hand and said, "Mrs. Turner, it's an honor to finally meet you." I smiled, but inside a little part of me felt uneasy. Not because he wasn't nice, he was, but because I could feel my place in her heart shifting. Mothers notice these things. We can tell when our children's hearts start belonging to someone else. Still, I tried to be kind. I cooked for them, welcomed him into our home, and hoped he would love her as much as I did. But after that day, she visited less often. Her voice on the phone sounded polite, not warm like before, like she was talking to someone she had outgrown. I told myself, she's just busy. Don't overthink it. But deep down, I knew something was changing. The last time she came home, she only stayed a few hours. She looked distracted, checking her phone constantly. Before leaving, she hugged me quickly and said, "Mama, please don't worry if I'm quiet for a while. Life's just moving fast right now." That was the last time I saw her in person. After that, months passed. I called. She rarely picked up, I texted. Sometimes she'd reply with a heart emoji, nothing more. Then one morning, those wedding pictures appeared, soft music swells, slow piano chords. That moment broke something inside me, but it also woke something up. For years, my life had revolved around her needs, her happiness, her dreams. And now, for the first time, I asked myself, what about me? I didn't have an answer then, but I knew that silence, the kind she had left behind, can become heavy. And when it does, it can make you do things you never thought you would. Days turned into weeks after I saw those wedding pictures. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, not my neighbors. I just carried it quietly. In the mornings, I'd still make 2 cups of tea out of habit, one for me, one for her, and then stare at the empty chair across the table. The cup would stay untouched until the tea went cold. I suppose it's strange, the little things we do to hold on to love that's already gone. I'd look at her pictures online sometimes. She looked happy. Truly happy. There was a light in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years. And while I wanted to be glad for her, there was an ache deep inside that wouldn't go away. I replayed every moment we'd shared, wondering if I had done something wrong. Was I too protective? Too present? Maybe she needed space, and I never learned how to give it. One evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun go down. The sky was painted with orange and gold, and for a moment I remembered all the sunsets we watched together when she was little. She'd sit beside me, resting her head on my shoulder, whispering, "Mama, promise me we'll always be this close." And I had promised. Now, that promise felt like a ghost, something beautiful that once lived but didn't anymore. I tried calling her again. This time, a man's voice answered. "Hello?" I froze. Is Emily there?" "She's in a meeting right now," he said politely. "May I take a message?" I hung up. That was the first time I heard her husband's voice. I didn't even know they were married then, not officially, but the tone of familiarity, the comfort in his voice. I understood. A week later, she finally called. "Mama," she said softly, "I meant to tell you. We got married last month. It all happened so fast." Her voice was cautious, like someone walking on fragile ice. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, I forced a small laugh and said, "I saw the pictures, sweetheart." Silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Then she said, "I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to be like that." I wanted to ask why. Why didn't she tell me? Why wasn't I there to fix her veil, to hold her hand, to whisper blessings like mothers do? But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "It's all right, Emily. You look beautiful. I hope you're happy." And before she could answer, I ended the call. I remember sitting on the floor that night, holding her old wedding dress catalog, the one she used to show me when she was a teenager, pointing at pictures and saying, "One day, Mama, you'll help me pick mine." I cried for hours, not just because she got married without me, but because I realized that the part of her life where she needed me was over. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the wind chime she had hung years ago. Its soft ringing filled the empty house, echoing through the rooms like laughter from the past. I walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, the photo frames, the marks on the door frame where we used to measure her height every year. And I whispered, "Maybe it's time." I didn't mean revenge. It wasn't anger. It was acceptance, in the strangest way. I began cleaning out her old room. Her clothes were still neatly folded in the closet. The books she loved, the ones she made me promise never to throw away, were still on the shelf. Every object carried a memory. I packed them all carefully into boxes, one by one. When the room was empty, I stood in the middle of it and whispered, "Thank you for growing up here." The next week, I called a real estate agent. He came by, looked around, and said, "You could get a good price for this house, ma'am. It's cozy and well kept." I smiled faintly and said, "It's time someone else made memories here." As he left, I looked at the house once more, the kitchen where we baked cookies, the hallway where she'd run to greet me, the windows she used to decorate every Christmas, and I felt both pain and peace. Because sometimes love means letting go, even if it hurts. That night, I sat by the window thinking of what to do next. I didn't have much family left. Selling the house felt like closing a chapter, a painful but necessary one. But as I looked at the stars, I whispered, "I hope you're happy, my love, truly." "And maybe, somewhere out there," she whispered back, "the day I sold the house was gray. Not cold, not stormy, just gray. The kind of day that feels suspended between what's gone and what's about to begin." I signed the papers quietly. The real estate agent smiled and said, "Congratulations, ma'am. It's a beautiful sale." I nodded. My hands trembled a little as I took the pen off the paper. When he left, I stood alone in the living room. The echoes of our laughter still seemed to live in the walls. I walked from room to room one last time, touching the kitchen counter, the old dining table, her bedroom door. Everything was so still. In the corner of the living room was a little mark on the floor, a scratch she made when she was 5, dragging her toy chair too hard. I used to scold her for that. Now, I found myself kneeling down and running my fingers over it, smiling through tears. I whispered, "Goodbye, sweetheart. Thank you for every moment." Then I closed the door behind me, locked it, and left the key with the agent. Sound cue, door clicks shut, soft rain continues. That night, I moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't fancy, just a single room, a small balcony, and an old sofa that creaked when I sat down. But it was quiet. And for the first time in years, I had no one to cook for, no one to wait for, no footsteps in the hallway. I tried to fill the silence. I started reading again, going for walks in the park, talking to strangers at the grocery store. But every time I saw a mother with her daughter, my heart ached. Then, about 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Emily. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was shaky. "Mama, I went to the house today." My heart stopped. "Oh?" I said softly. "How did you find it?" There was a long pause. "Mama, someone else was there. They said they bought it last week." "What do you mean it's sold?" I didn't answer right away. The silence between us stretched, heavy, painful. Finally, I said quietly, "It's not our house anymore, Emily." Her voice broke. "You sold my home? The house I grew up in?" I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "You didn't need it anymore, sweetheart. You have your own home now, your own life." "You could have told me," she said, her tone trembling between anger and disbelief. I smiled sadly and whispered, "You didn't tell me either." There was nothing but silence on the line after that. I could hear her crying softly, and I wanted to reach through the phone, hold her, and tell her everything was okay. But I didn't. I let her cry, just like I had cried the night I saw her wedding pictures. "Mama," she said finally, "why did you do that?" I took a deep breath and said, "Because keeping that house felt like waiting for someone who wasn't coming home." Her breath caught. I could tell she understood, but she didn't know what to say. "I love that house," she whispered. "I know," I said. So did I. Then she hung up. Soft piano fades, then rises slightly. For days, I didn't hear from her. I kept my phone close, checking it every few minutes, hoping she'd call again, but she didn't. I went back to the park, to my quiet walks and my small apartment. I tried to convince myself I'd done the right thing, that selling the house was a step toward healing. But deep inside, I felt an emptiness that no sale could fill. A week later, I found a small envelope under my apartment door. My name was written in her handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a short letter. Mama, I don't understand why you did what you did, but I think I hurt you first. I didn't tell you about the wedding because I was afraid you'd say no. I thought you'd think I was too young, or that he wasn't right for me. I thought I was protecting our relationship by avoiding conflict, but I ended up breaking it instead. I'm sorry. I miss you. Can we talk? I read that letter again and again. My tears fell onto the paper, smudging her ink. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, holding the letter close to my heart. For the first time in months, I felt warmth instead of pain. The next morning, I called her. She answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting. Emily, I said softly, would you like to come over for tea? There was a pause, then a quiet yes. That afternoon, she came. When I opened the door, she looked different, older, wiser, softer. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying too. She didn't say a word at first. She just hugged me, tightly, desperately, like she used to when she was little, and I held her, feeling her heartbeat against mine. I'm sorry, Mama, she whispered. I know, I said. So am I. We sat at the small table, sipping tea. There was no anger left, no accusations, just two hearts that had finally found their way back to each other. She told me about her husband, about her new job, about the small apartment they had rented. I listened, really listened, without interrupting, without judgment. At one point, she looked around and said, "This place is small but cozy. It feels peaceful." I smiled. Peace is all I ever wanted for us. After that day, Emily started visiting more often, not every week, but enough that the silence in my apartment no longer felt so heavy. She would bring flowers sometimes, daisies, my favorite, and place them in a small glass jar on the table. We didn't talk much about the past. It was like we both knew that too many words could reopen wounds that had just begun to heal. Instead, we talked about small things, recipes, her work, the weather, the funny neighbors she had. And in those quiet, simple conversations, something inside me began to breathe again. One evening, as we were sipping tea, she looked at me and said softly, "Mama, do you ever regret selling the house?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. The truth was, I did, sometimes, but not in the way she thought. I don't regret selling the house, I said. I regret that I had to. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I smiled gently. That house was our story, Emily, but stories change. People grow. Holding on too tightly would have only made the pain worse. Letting it go helped me find peace, even if it hurt. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I think I understand now, she whispered. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, trembling a little, just like when she was a child. And in that moment, all the distance between us melted away. We didn't need apologies anymore. We just needed each other. Soft piano transitions to hopeful strings. Months passed, and we grew closer again, not as a mother and a little girl, but as two women learning to love each other anew. Sometimes we'd walk in the park together. She'd talk about her husband, her plans, her worries, and I'd listen, offering advice only when she asked. One sunny afternoon, she said, "Mama, we're saving up to buy a house soon. Not big, but something simple." I smiled. "A home doesn't need to be big, sweetheart. It just needs love," she smiled back. "Will you help me decorate it?" I laughed softly. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. Sound cue, gentle laughter, birds chirping. When they finally bought their home, she invited me first. It was small, 2 bedrooms, a little garden in the back. The air smelled of fresh paint and hope. As I walked through it, I noticed a few things. The way she had placed family pictures on the shelves, the same old wind chime hanging by the window. It was the one she'd taken from our old house before leaving for college. The gentle sound of it filled the air, familiar and comforting. She smiled shyly and said, "I brought a piece of our old home with me." I felt tears in my eyes, but this time, they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude for the second chance life had given us. That evening, before I left, she hugged me at the door and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I kissed her forehead and said, "There's nothing a mother can't forgive when her child comes home." That night, as I sat in my little apartment, I looked out the window at the stars, the same ones I used to point at when Emily was small, and I whispered, "We're okay now." Sometimes, love changes its shape. It goes from being loud and protective to quiet and distant, and then one day it returns, softer than before, but stronger too. I realized something that night. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just makes the future lighter to carry. I no longer live in that old house, but it lives in me. Every laugh, every tear, every whispered goodnight, they're all still there, just in a different place now. When I close my eyes, I can still see Emily running down the hallway, hear her laughter echoing off the walls, feel her little hand in mine, and I smile, because she's happy, and that's all I ever wanted. So if you ever find yourself holding on to something, a home, a memory, a person, so tightly that it begins to hurt, remember this. Sometimes love isn't about keeping things close. It's about letting go and trusting they'll find their way back to you. And if they do, hold them with gentleness, not fear. Music fades into silence, closing lines spoken softly. That's what I learned. When my daughter got married without telling me, and I sold her house,